Sure.
But yeah, I had a 6-foot rat snake in my house 2 weeks ago.
Rat snakes are good.
It
rat
was
snakes
good.
are kind of like auspicious, I think.
That's what I said.
Welcome to Cult Favorite, the podcast that will never, ever, we solemnly swear, we will never put a rattlesnake in your mailbox. It's just, that's a terrible idea for so many reasons. And unkind.
Yeah.
I'm Miranda Simmons.
So 2 things. One, the rattlesnake in the mailbox.
2 things specifically about that. Yes,
yes,
go.
2 things. We'll get to it.
Okay.
But we'll tell the full story. But the first of all, the mailbox where I don't have to go to the street to get my mail.
Okay.
It just appears on the inside of my door.
Okay.
I want one of those. I want that.
Okay. Okay. Sure. Okay. This is the segment of the podcast where we just say things that we want. I got some stuff. Good. Yeah.
Well, no,
good.
it's related to he had a mailbox where you had the mail slot and then like a bin on the inside. And the snake was inside and he reached in and got right. But second thing was, I had a snake in my house, not in my mailbox, because I have to walk to the street to get my mail. Like a bum.
Right.
And
sure.
But yeah, I had a 6-foot rat snake in my house 2 weeks ago.
Rat snakes are good.
Rat
snakes are kind of like auspicious, I think.
That's what I said. So it was it's like on the wall, on the door.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, my partner found it and yelled my name.
Mm.
And I come up there and like, what? I have no idea. And there's a snake. And I'm like, oh, it's a rat snake. And then she yells, you don't know snakes. Don't go near it. And I'm like, no. Because normally I'm the freak out person in a situation. Uh-huh. But apparently snakes
How did the kids feel? Did they all like congregate?
We told them nothing. They were all downstairs. They didn't even know about it until after the fact. I was like, there was a snake up there.
I had a vision of like, Sound of Music where they all like pile in during the thunderstorm, where they all like clamber up the stairs to watch the snake.
They were watching YouTube, probably.
Anyway, well, congrats on your rat snake. This was a rattlesnake whose rattle was cut off by the folks in Synanon, who is the group that we will be talking about, so as not to warn the person they were harming. What?
How do you cut off like?
Oh, the rattlesnake. I thought you were about to say something about like my phrasing or something.
No,
I was like,
how do you take the rattle off a rattlesnake
it's just a lot of
without
coffee.
Getting bit yourself? It's the whole thing.
Well,
I have so many questions. We'll get to that. The thing's not covered in the documentary. I'm Mike Altman. We are 2 early studies professors trying to understand all of these cult documentaries. You can't stop binge watching. If you want to support the show and help more people find us, follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Cult Favorite Pod and subscribe to the show. The ratings and the reviews help. That's what gets people to find us.
Yeah.
Content warning. Besides snakes, there'll be maybe some discussion of physical abuse.
Well, and animal abuse.
Animal abuse. Yes.
We've already we dealt with that.
And yeah. All right. So we were talking about the Synanon Fix on HBO 2024.
Did the Cure become a cult?
Did the Cure become a cult? The subtitle. They don't really answer that question. What did you know about this? About Synanon?
Yeah, not much. I mean, it sounded familiar. Like when it popped up as a documentary, there was a vague like something in the memory bank, sorta, but I wouldn't have been able to answer a question of like, hey, what was the group Synanon known for? I don't know that I would have been able to answer that. Yeah. So,
I knew nothing. I think it had sat there in my HBO Max recommendations for a while. And I think I actually had it mixed up with another documentary that we haven't watched yet. The one about the place for troubled youths or whatever.
And we were talking earlier, and you said that you don't think that Synanon is a group that has shown up a lot in like American religious history scholarship.
Yeah,
right?
like, and I don't know everything, so someone's probably, we have other academics to listen to this. They're probably screaming at their phones.
A rat snake when you see one.
I do know a rat snake when I see one. That was on my oral exams in the PhD. Identify the snake.
Right.
But yeah, I don't.
It hasn't really shown up.
It hasn't shown up. There's probably
readings and reviews.
New religious movements, cult specialists who know about it, but it hasn't made that jump into the thing where, like, in conversations about stuff in the 60s or 70s, it shows up,
right?
And it's like it had more people in it than Heaven's Gate.
Yeah. Oh, tons more. Tons more. Yeah.
A lot of press, much press coverage. Yeah. In a lot of ways.
Yes.
Like it had a court case. Like all of the things.
It had a movie in 1965 with Eartha Kitt. I cannot stress this strongly enough.
Right. And
Eartha Kitt.
So it was in Los Angeles.
Yep.
Like not too far from Scientology.
Yep.
So I guess it is an interesting question to me why this story that I found fascinating on a lot of ways has not been a dissertation. So if you need a dissertation out there,
you're
write a dissertation about Synanon.
You've always got ideas about dissertations for other people.
I keep a list.
I mean, I am also now interested in this. I'm newly interested in this question because you said what you just said. So, but I don't have the same like scholarly wheelhouse that you do. So I wonder,
some would argue I don't either.
I wonder if it's, so I'm just really like kind of speculating, speculative analysis is like, maybe it doesn't map as neatly onto the kinds of topics or tropes we think about when we think about new religious movements in the 60s. This didn't start out as a religion. It took a long time before it filed to like gain that status. I don't think it ever formally gained that status. I think it tried.
Yeah.
But it was like, because it's about addiction recovery, but it's also, you know, it's an intentional like living community, et cetera, social experiment, but it's also.
What's interesting, and we should get this, I guess, online, but not to get ahead of ourselves, but the addiction recovery label stays with it all the way through its rise, all the way, all of the controversies and legal cases. And then even at the very end, when they're, you know, it's sort of falling apart, it's still these companies that are like working with it, like legit, like Anheuser-Busch and all these things are like, oh, well, it's an alcohol recovery company, like program.
Drug
and so
recovery,
that like in the same, but so there's something about that phrase that functions like religion does for say Scientology or lots of other groups as a way to like, you know, shield them from taxes and all sorts of other things.
Yes, they were a charitable organization, so they did have tax exempt status as a
501c3 social services.
There it is. Right.
Yeah. So,
okay.
All right. So it's 4 episodes on HBO Max, HBO production. You told me earlier it was produced by Kennedy.
Rory Kennedy directed it. I don't know if she also is a producer of it, but I didn't go that far into the production details. But Rory Kennedy joint.
So it's sort of like an episode about the rise of it, an episode about its establishment and what they do in the group, and then 2 episodes about its sort of downfall. And along the way, the thing that kind of holds it all together is this idea that the founder, Chuck Dederich, who we'll talk about in a second, is somehow like Synanon is a mirror for Chuck. So as Chuck goes, so goes the Synanon community.
But that reflection is very much informed by a fact that we do not learn until like near the end of episode 4. So like way to bury the lead, that he has undiagnosed bipolar disorder for most of his life. Like, so when, well, whatever. I was a little.
Why do you think so you don't think that they didn't reveal that till the last episode,
right?
When he
I have ideas about why that is, but we can get there. We'll
get there.
Yeah. Okay.
So we'll come back to that because I have a question about how they talk about Chuck in a lot of ways. So what happens in the doc? All right, I'm gonna try to do this quickly.
Okay.
Here we go.
Do it.
So Synanon is a drug addiction treatment community founded by Chuck Dederich in the early 1960s. And the whole program is sort of based around this talk therapy ritual called the game. And the whole documentary opens with...
Did we say talk therapy? It's more like yell therapy.
Yeah. Yeah, it is a very... I mean, this is the piece that I think is very much of its moment, like of that kind of 1960s psychoanalytic experimentation. You know, they mentioned Esalen and the farm and these other communities at the time. And so the game is this process where people sort of aggressively vent their anger at each other, at the world, at their life, at everything. And then they're kind of like thoroughly held to account by one another. You know, and so like, and this is what opens the whole doc is this sort of black and white footage of people just screaming at each other.
Because he really starts doing this exercise in the 50s. And I don't know. Yeah. Like if you think about how much was getting bottled up just internally by lots of people. I mean, always forever. But like if you think about lots of just the way that society was organized in mid-century Americana, and then the 60s kind of stereotype reaction to that are intentional living communities of like peace, love, and understanding. This is an intentional living community that is trying to like tap into the darker, more negative emotions that are obviously and clearly still there, and give voice to some of that, which a lot of people found really empowering.
Yeah. When you put it that way, I have this image of like Eddie Haskell screaming at Beaver Cleaver.
It's right there beneath the surface, man. Just scratch it just a little tiny bit. It's right there.
Well, and so, so it's this, but it's a game. And the idea is that whatever is said in the game stays in the game.
Yep. Starts off as a private exercise, which is also very important, that will change later. But.
And it starts off as a communal exercise amongst these people who are all living together in this sort of communal space. And originally, like a couple dozen, like not, a ton. And so, but it's successful. The people who come into Synanon and stay there, they get clean.
Yep.
Chuck himself was a recovering alcoholic who had gone through Alcoholics Anonymous, and that informs a lot of this.
But there was nothing else for like drug addiction outside of alcoholism at the time.
These are people who are self-identifying as dope fiends.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like a whole different way of thinking about addiction as an illness.
It was really like prison or asylums. Like those are kind of your options.
Yeah. And one of the things that Chuck says is that he thinks that the solution to your addiction is inside you.
Yep.
And that the game is a way to find that by having sort of people. So one theme I think through this is there's an idea that the game is a moment of kind of holding a mirror up to yourself to the people who are going to, kind of call you on your bullshit. At the same time that the game and Synanon, and the game is sort of the heart of the community and sort of mirrors the way the community is going to work. And then that kind of mirrors Chuck's own life. And so it's sort of, as one changes, it affects kind of all of them.
If you're doing that, if you're holding each other to account in a safe space, then that can be, really generative and fruitful, as many people found it. And it began as a safe space. Like the two cardinal rules were no drugs, no violence, no threat of violence.
No threat of violence.
Even no threat of violence. So you are in a space where there are no drugs to tempt you, and there is everybody can yell at each other, but there is never going to be any physical violence.
Yeah.
And so, then that makes a lot of things possible.
So it's in Santa Monica, and they get a 501c3 nonprofit status. They live off donations because this is working. They start to get attention. They eventually move to the Armory on the beach of Santa Monica.
Media loves them.
Media loves them in 1960s. And the people, like, they don't want to leave because they fear if they're not in the community, they're going to lose, they're going to get back on drugs.
Sure.
And so they start bringing in their kids, and this really becomes an intentional community, right on the beach in Santa Monica.
Yeah.
But on top of that,
when it was possible to do that.
Right. Seriously.
Like,
I didn't Google. I'm going to Google Maps where the Armory is now.
Anyway.
It's probably, but on top of this, it becomes sort of a radically inclusive and radically integrated.
Yes.
So you have, that was one of the big points early on, is you have black and white people playing the game together.
Yeah.
At a level, in a sort of this weird equality that is not available anywhere else.
Well, because it's radical vulnerability.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this attracts attention and a lot of hassles from the Santa Monica residents and city who don't want integrated dope fiends on the beach. And Chuck even marries a black woman, Betty. What's her last name? What's it? Good.
Dederich.
Well, yeah. Goodson, I believe.
But, okay.
Because her son's name is Good. And so he's sort of modeling this kind of, with an interracial marriage in 1965 or whatever it was. The game is so successful, it attracts, they flash all these covers of these. I love 1970s book covers, but these great 1970s book covers of books written about Synanon. And soon people who are not drug addicts are attracted to the game. The game becomes, and I think there's a way that the game gets pulled into kind of larger self-help culture that's blooming at this period. And now so-called squares, or eventually called lifestylers. And they start these clubs where you can not be an addict recovering in Synanon, but just,
Betty Coleman. Sorry.
Coleman.
It was going to bug my brain.
No, that's fine.
Betty Coleman. Anyway. Because who we hear from is the son of Lena, I think.
Okay.
Right? Anyway.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry.
But they start these clubs.
Yes.
And so people are playing the game all over the place.
Literally, like Lucille Ball comes in.
There's a whole list of
Leonard Nemoy hangs out to play the game sometimes.
Yeah.
Like there are celebrities aplenty.
But this is
are.
Yeah, but this is the same thing that happens with like transcendental meditation. There's like a ton of things that go through the same process.
Sure.
In this moment,
they have parties.
Yeah.
They have jazz musicians in their ranks.
They have Saturday night parties that people that can come to.
It's a good time. It's a good time, and everyone's clean.
And they move to an even bigger facility, the Del Mar Club. And they start a school for kids. So there's there's a whole section on like the family life inside the community during the late 60s. And these kids come in and they try to build a whole school around the game, but kids are not equipped to play the game,
of course
and it becomes horribly traumatic.
Yes,
which is the beginning of a lot of problems around the kids. The children are the ones who suffer the most. In this community, in this
part of the ethos that guided that was Chuck's idea that if something is good for him, then it must be good for everybody.
Yes.
And so if I made up this game, it seems good for people. It must also be good for the kids. And they were doing like. They tested really, like the kids were smart. They were doing by lots of other kinds of measures, but they were also just being subjected to verbal abuse on the regular.
Yeah, there was a study. The school is a very kind of
and then physical abuse
Montessori on steroids, like let a kid learn whatever they want kind of approach. But there was a study that found that
angry unschooling or something.
Yeah, angry. Toxic unschooling. And they scored higher on like test scores in this study that they performed. And so there's this expansion of all of these practices on the game. They have like the stew, which becomes the game, but it lasts for like 24 hours and people are tagging in and out. And they have the trip, which was inspired. Apparently Chuck had been involved in LSD studies in the 50s at UCLA. And so based on that, he started this thing called the Trip, which was like a 3-day event with lots of
sleep deprivation.
Sleep deprivation to
like you are going to trip if you.
but again, the radical vulnerability. In the documentary, it's like, yes, it was hard. Yes, it was sleep. But by the end, everyone is having these experiences of, and joyful,
of course,
communal experiences.
But that's like, it's one of those kinds of toxic bonding exercises like hazing or whatever, where like people, so they get sleep deprived, they start yelling at each other. They have these really intense like gaming sessions. And then at the end of it, they're like forgiving each other and hugging each other. And so you go through that kind of really intense trauma and it is bonding.
They buy a bunch of different properties. And what happens is the lifestylers who join Synanon, and actually some of them start to move into the community. They are the sorts of people that experimented with these things in the late 60s. So they're very well educated, very well off. A number of them have businesses.
They're just donating to Synanon.
Yeah. Then a number of them have like rich parents who die and they give them all of that. So they start to very quickly, and this whole story only happens in like 35 years or something. Like it's very compressed.
I felt like it's interesting because that makes sense to hear you say it like that. I also kind of felt like I had a good long time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like Heaven's Gate was another one that I felt like, they cropped up in the 60s. They, ended in the 90s. And they feel like they had like a solid trajectory. Like there was some evolutions that happened. This one felt like there was enough time to see it morph into some different things. But you're right. It was both. It's like,
it was super rapid. I mean, because there's not a lot of dates in the documentary. There are later on, but it's like 63 is where we kind of get Synanon as a community in Santa Monica. By 68,
getting on the map.
Yeah. By 68, they're in the bigger space in Santa Monica, the Del Mar Club. And then by 70, they've bought the land in Tamales Bay.
Yeah.
Where they were planning to put 20,000 people.
And then they have facilities all over the nation.
Right. And so it's like, it is a quick moving thing.
Part of it is because of this massive influx of money.
Yeah.
They just had so much money coming to them because they were helping addicts get clean, so it makes sense that it felt to people who wanted to invest in something good that, here was a way that they could do like real good. But then, there were lots of hangers-on who wanted to be part of it themselves.
And the lifestylers begin to not only bring money, but they start to take a lot of Chuck's attention. And there's a kind of sense by a lot of the old timers and the recovering addicts.
That's what they call themselves.
Yes, the old timers and the lifestylers.
Yeah.
And also, like, as soon as you have two named groups in the community,
there's an us and them.
There's us and them inside, right?
Yeah.
And that's a problem. And a lot of the old timers start to leave,
right?
And there's this particular game where Chuck kind of goes off on the old timers in a way that feels kind of out of bounds.
He had also just stopped. I forget exactly where this was in the trajectory, but at one point he issued an edict where everyone just had to stop smoking.
Yes.
And it's like, what are you talking about? Like cigarettes and coffee, man. Like
that's the backbone of AA in a lot of places.
Yes. And it's so, but he had to stop smoking or I think maybe he was told to stop smoking or something by a doctor. I don't think he just decided it. But
he was told he had emphysema or was
again, if something is happening to and for him, it needs to happen to and for everybody.
Because it used to give out free cigarettes. That was one of the policies, too.
That was kind of one of the whole things. And so I think it was a big deal.
A key thing, and it's both, I think, a true account of what happens, but also a really important, I think, storytelling piece for the directors, is that Chuck has these rules. So you have this recovering alcoholic who has these rules, like no violence, threats of violence, no drinking or drugs, free cigarettes.
Yep.
And they make a big deal about the non-smoking thing, because that's the first mandated behavior and the first breaking of one of the rules.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and it's also, it's like, it seems, it might sound, I guess, kind of low stakes, like, so what, free cigarettes, but that's a real, like, physiological imposition for someone who is actively working every single day to stay clean.
Yeah.
Like, anyway.
No, I think it's right. So then they also, so all this is happening. They separate the children and start to send them off to a school, and they have this idea of communal parenting. So all the kids are kind of raised by all these various caretakers. But that kind of leads to a thing where a lot of the kids don't get the attention, that they need. And as the kids get older, there's sort of this moment where everything starts to kind of turn, especially after the cigarette thing. More of the rules start getting broken, or Chuck starts breaking them. So as the kids are getting older and growing up in this, like we said, aggressive, angry unschooling, they start to get into trouble. They start to be hard to control. Shock of all shocks. And so they develop what they call the punk squad, which becomes this sort of abusive military style boot camp for the kids.
Yeah.
And it's eventually expanded to pretty much all the kids.
Yeah.
And they even start taking juvenile delinquents from the state. They become an agency for the state.
Which is one of the ways that they maintain this kind of tax exempt status and stuff. But and partially because
so many of the old timers, the former addicts, are leaving, and they're not really doing that much drug treatment anymore.
Right.
Partially because the method they had was not necessarily aimed at just drug use.
Yeah. It also goes to show you, though, just how, like, legit this organization seemed to the powers that be. It's
like while there have been some filed complaints about child abuse at the Synanon school, the state is also, there's a guy, they show an official who's like, we think Synanon is doing wonderful work. So there is this real facade versus what's going on the inside.
For sure.
The next sort of big break of the rules is during one game, Chuck loses it and pours a root beer over a woman's head.
Because she's actually critiquing him.
Right.
Which is not really something that the game typically involved.
Yeah.
It was really just them berating each other, or he gets to berate, but he is not often berated.
Right.
And she does it.
And so that's the first violence. I mean, that's, the cardinal rule of the game is no
violence.
Yes. At the same time, they have all these facilities across the country in California. They have one in Detroit. They have some in New York. And so they start this thing called The Wire, which is basically a radio station of Chuck talking, whether it's the game or just lectures or whatever, because the man is just talking constantly.
Well, and what it also means is that the game now is no longer private affair. It's a public thing that people can listen in on, and that just changes the dynamic completely.
Right. So one of the women that is interviewed for the documentary who was in Synanon, her job was to like record all the stuff that Chuck says, all the games, and then make tapes, and they would play the tapes over the over the wire. And so, the game is no longer private. And then, meanwhile, the press shifts. And part of it is a woman who goes into Synanon. There's different stories, obviously, between what she says and what Synanon says, but she was sort of found on the beach and then comes into Synanon, and then she says she was held there against her will. They say, oh no, she was being beaten by her husband, and her husband says they're keeping her, holding her against her will. Hires a lawyer, Paul Morantz, and this becomes both a media story, a big news story. Paul calls the LA Times, who starts doing investigations into everything, but also becomes a lawsuit against Synanon. So now the press has turned, and Synanon actually starts filing a ton of libel suits, and actually sees libel suits as a revenue source.
Oh yeah.
The other big revenue source they have at this time is they have a thing called Ad Gap, where they're making tchotchkes to advertise your business.
Yeah, so that you can put your Chevron label or whatever on a
which I didn't
thermos.
think about. That was probably a new idea.
I don't know.
I'm like, I feel like we're so...
They were making a ton of money doing it.
They're making tons of money.
It must have been filling enough of a void.
And all of the lifestylers are now working inside Synanon. Like everything's being brought. There was an idea of containment that it should all be done in Synanon.
Because one of the shifts, like as things kind of continue to unspool, Chuck gets more restrictive, doing these mandates with cigarettes and things, but also now like more isolationist.
And the rule against violence gets sort of thrown out the window. There's a bunch
He's like, we can be violent as long as it's what did he say? Basically like as long as it functions for us. Like as long as it's feasible. Feasible was the word.
Yeah.
I was like, it's not fortuitous. It started with an F. Feasible.
Yeah. Well, it basically, there's a bunch of footage of them like getting all these guns, and they like very publicly buy a bunch of guns as a kind of like, don't mess with us kind of out there. And there's all this footage of them having the shoot where they're all learning how to use guns. They have a kind of militarized wing called the Imperial Marines that someone just made.
Her Majesty's Imperial Marines.
What are we going to name ourselves?
It becomes Imperial Marines. And a lot of the kids start running away.
Yeah.
Which, and there's like a farm family or two who live kind of near the compound that then take in these kids and help them get back home. Like they are rescuing these children, and so they become enemies of Synanon.
Yeah.
And so this no violence policy really starts to kind of coalesce around their deep rage for these farm families who are helping the kids. And one of them, they like
the kids attack,
wail on. They like leave him for dead. He's like in a coma for a while.
They had cerebral meningitis. So they talk about this.
The person they beat up?
Yeah.
I know Chuck Dederich had meningitis. That was why his face was paralyzed.
No, the guy they beat up got
really?
from the skull fracture.
Ugh.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, so the rules are changing. They're getting more violent, and they find themselves kind of attacked from all sides, and Chuck is getting more and more angry and talking constantly, and basically is sort of saying someone should do something about this lawyer, which is Paul Morantz. And this is what really, I think, is the beginning of the end. They, two members, allegedly, put a rattlesnake in Paul Morantz's mailbox, the lawyer.
They jumped a shark, and they planted a rattlesnake. I don't know.
Yeah.
I was trying to go with like an animal metaphor.
Yeah, no, they put a rattlesnake.
This is when they jumped the shark.
That is a good, just start using that as like they put a rattlesnake in my mailbox.
You know,
when someone really hates you, like,
who does that?
I
mean, I guess points for creativity, but like that's,
that is the thing too. There's all these, this has come up a few times where the modes of violence get weird in some of these groups. It's like, I don't know. I don't know if there's some symbolism there, but
then of course there's also, whatever. We don't have time for the rabbit hole that would have us have I think, warranted conversation about what it is that makes us feel like particular modes of violence are weird and particular modes of violence thus then implicitly are normal. But anyway,
well, I guess as opposed to just like shooting up his house, right? With all the guns you have. I think, I guess what I was thinking of is like, if you're still holding on to the no violence thing, like we didn't do anything violent. We just put a snake there. The snake got violent.
Yeah, right.
But
they enacted violence on the snake, which I won't let go of. But anyway.
Yeah. And allegedly, one of them that's charged of the two is Lance Kenton, whose dad was a very famous jazz musician. He's actually interviewed about it and will not say if he actually did it. He's like, I took responsibility for it.
He took responsibility for it.
There are a number of interesting interview moments we can talk about if we have time. But so the snake bites Paul Morantz when he's, trying to get his mail. Bad enough the bills you get in the mailbox to also get a snake bite.
Hey. All right.
This leads to a criminal case, and the Kenton and the two men involved it sounds like they got suckered into pleading no contest, thinking that they were going to get time served, and instead got 3 years in prison.
Right.
Chuck gets 5 months probation. So what has happened at this point too is earlier a bunch of them go on the run to Europe briefly.
Italy, yeah.
To Italy. And in Italy, Chuck starts drinking again. Or people think starts drinking again, but apparently it had been happening prior to this. And then everyone starts drinking. And so now the no drugs, no drinking
policy. And it is
policy.
just totally an about face. It's not even like, well, I've been thinking about it and blah, 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 blah. It's like, so what if I have a drink? What's wrong with that? And it's like, what? Dude.
Right. Yeah. That's the whole point, man.
But again, I was very frustrated to learn that the bipolar diagnosis did not have more. It just didn't take up much space in the narrative description of what was going on. It's not to excuse anything by any means. It does place in a pretty palpable context, though, some of this manic behavior that is like, this guy's wacko. That makes some sense. This is ridiculous. This is all part of his maniacal narcissism. He's such a cult leader because he's now trying to do this. And it's like,
isn't that though?
You
like
just
a
have
narrative?
A lot of people listening to him and doing what he says. He's a person in mania that doesn't have help.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that makes it okay. I'm just
no. But I wonder. I guess but isn't that like a narrative choice? Like you want the audience to be confused, to be unsure about why this guy is doing all these things, and then you don't find out to the end. As opposed to if you knew all along, it would be less shocking. It would be less like Like
You're right.
You want the audience, right? But that's but this is an HBO documentary, right? So the point is to get that emotional response from the audience. It is one of the things that I find
so frustrating about cult documentaries and just the kind of true crime narrative trick where you leave something like that is an important explanatory framework out, because the whole I think it's because that it serves the story that we tell societally to keep an individual, a charismatic leader, just removed completely from the bounds of normal social behavior.
Right.
And it's because he's so removed from that norm that makes him so charismatic, him typically, but or makes him so charismatic and makes him so dangerous and makes him so kooky and out there all the time, just perpetuating this idea that it's about this person and not about a context where addicts had no place to go and they were finally getting help, where mental health and where mental health disorders are also not getting treatment or help.
Oh yeah.
And so we want to give context in terms of here's the build of how people got lured in.
Yeah.
We spend lots of time with that. Here's how these, sheeple became manipulated by the maniacal narcissist. But we don't give a ton of context for said maniacal narcissist.
Yeah, anyway. I agree. I totally agree with that. I also think it's a genre convention that is part of how how they want to tell these stories, because the goal is to have that, the goal is to have the audience to have that aha moment of, oh, and if you give that to them from the beginning, you don't get that.
But then even if it's they don't spend time making it make sense though, then it's just sort of a thing.
That's true. It is sort of just glossed over.
Yeah. It's not so if we use this to map backwards these things that don't make sense, then we can kind of piece together a way that explains how all of this unraveled.
Yeah.
Instead, it's Andy was bipolar.
Yeah, there is no moment. That's true. There.
So is that how we're treating mental health issues?
Yeah. There's no moment where it's oh, this is why he has all this energy at times. This is why he's just talking nonstop on the wire. This is why there was not a moment to connect with that. It's because that's what cult
leaders do. Cult leaders talk a lot.
They do, though. But to be fair,
no. So do teachers. So do I don't know. So do bossy dads. So do I don't know. So do CEOs.
I'm thinking about the particular penchant that you see again and again of lots of recording of oneself talking a lot.
Jim Jones and all that. Yeah. Sure.
But
I mean, sure. But that isn't unique to cult leaders.
No.
It's unique to a certain personality type that goes in to all sorts of directions 100%. In society.
Yeah.
And a lot of times we call that unbridled confidence. And so when it is explained as it doesn't have to be explained. That's kind of the whole point. Is it doesn't have to be explained if it's just something that kooky cult leaders do. And so of course he does about faces on his prime directives.
Yeah.
Of course he starts issuing mandates and shaving people's heads.
We already talked about that, yeah. Head shaving.
Of course he does all these things because he's a kooky cult leader. Duh. Of course he does. And it's well,
no, I get that. So,
anyway.
Okay. So yeah, I don't want to circle back to the head shaving and all of that, but so more and more people leave. Chuck, by the time they arrest him after the trial or for the trial and all that, he's in a kind of stupor state from alcohol, and that's when they diagnose him with the bipolar. And really from there, it's just a story of continued deterioration of Chuck and people leaving the group. They lose their 501c3 status, which they also dump a massive tax debt. The government,
$55 million or something. Yeah.
It was bad. And I think there's a lot to be, I feel like there's probably a lot that could have been said about that, because those sorts of decisions don't just happen in a vacuum. So like, something happened there. And then we kind of hear it ends with hearing the hopes, regrets, reflections of all the former members they've interviewed. And I think JD, who is Chuck's daughter, she kind of gets the last word and says that people were lonely and needed the community, and that's why it existed. So that's there's a lot. There was a lot of details and a lot of. I thought it was very well made overall. I would put it up there with like Heaven's Gate, Cult of Cults, and the Alex Gibney Scientology is. You don't agree? That was okay. It's like been doing this podcast long enough. I know that okay.
You know me so well. It's not that I don't think it's well done. I think it is a very effective example of a specific subgenre that we are identifying with these conversations. So like inside of the cult documentary domain of media, it's a very effective example of that. And the efficacy is like, I was tuning in, I was watching this stuff that got us talking about it in the first place. And so it has appeal. I think that the ones sometimes that are like the most effective examples of the genre are also the ones that are the they fall into these patterns where like
I think
like
so.
of the I'm going to use like I don't have to do a lot of contextual work because I know that you're going to fill in a bunch of gaps where cult leader is concerned.
Well, or I'll give
etc.
I'll do the contextual work in specific spaces. So early on, I'm going to contextualize their racial progressivism into the larger 60s, or I'm going to contextualize their communal living alongside Esalen and the farm and all these other ones. But then other places, not so much, right?
And it's ultimately, it's kind of gonna be about this guy. And
but not
that I find really frustrating. Like I don't think it is about him categorically, and I do think that I mean, of course, like the voices that we hear are from all of these former members. And I find that really powerful and moving and really really useful. Even when we're not hearing from Chuck Dederich himself, like you said about like it just kind of the story about the group is a story about this guy, and such that. We've got like then also when one of the former members who was a child who grew up in the school, and she talks about like going off to college finally and how emancipating and like liberating that was. And then we're playing like the Natalie Merchant
like the Natalie
song.
Merchant?
No, I didn't.
I thought the soundtrack in this was amazing.
Respect to Natalie Merchant. Love Natalie Merchant. I just thought it was so hokey. I didn't like
Natalie Merchant rights don't come cheap, I imagine.
I'm not going to do my Natalie Merchant. I almost did. I almost did. She'll make her way.
Yeah. No.
So I guess I did.
It was a very good.
But I was just like, come on. This isn't what we're doing. Or is this what we're doing? I guess it's what we're doing. All right.
So there's this thing where I agree with everything you said. However,
you don't have to.
Yeah.
Is it a rat steak? I don't know.
But there's the documentary that I would make, and this is not it.
Okay.
But the documentary that they're going to make, if I evaluate it as the documentary, I'm saying if I evaluate it upon the terms of the thing itself, it's a great example of it. There are less quality examples of this same attempt at the genre.
Got it. Yes.
And at that level, that's why. Right?
Got it. Okay. Yeah. That is a level of nuance that, yes, I was not. Yes, it is.
Yeah. That's my take. Because I do think about these things as like holding them at arm's length. It's like, is this a great execution of a very problematic genre?
Of ethnographic analysis? No, it is not.
No. Like, but it's a better made version of, this than other things.
There's a bigger question though about like, so maybe what I'm trying to get at and what I would be interested in your thoughts on is like when we decide to disaggregate or separate the group from the leader in stories like this.
Yeah.
Because we have seen that over and over and over again. This group is about this person who did wrong by their people or by their followers or whatever. But in other cases, the story of an abuser is not at all a story of the group they represent.
Right.
That new documentary that like maybe we'll watch eventually, but the new documentary, shoot,
about the Catholic priest.
Yes,
we're watching that next.
Like, we are.
I think so. Pulling up the list right now.
Marcial.
I think that was on our list.
Yeah, it's called like he's like the Wolf of God. Or what's it called? Something like that.
The Wolf of God. Yeah.
I will be curious.
Marcial, the Wolf of God.
Right. So I've not seen it yet. So I don't know.
On the list next.
But I am willing to, and then maybe next time we talk, I can be like dramatically wrong, and then that'll be great. But just even that title and like the shot of him that's like, it looks like the priest. He looks like the priest from King of the Hill. It's just his face with like flames in his eyes or whatever. Yeah. That doesn't get to be a story about the Catholic Church. Right?
Yeah.
In a way that with Synanon cover image, you've got a little girl whose head is being shaved.
Right.
And so it's about her. But the story about her is a story about Chuck Dederich. Like it relies
why is her
upon,
head being shaved? Because Chuck mandated. So they had this head shaving thing that starts as a feminist moment in the game.
Yes,
right?
Even though it's like and maybe this was one of the I don't know, one of the interesting moments where Rory Kennedy is interviewing one of the people who was like one of the disciplinarians in or whatever, the punk squad. Basically, he was just like beating up children.
Yeah.
Right? Totally just beating up children in the name of discipline and structure. And she's like, is there a moment that you want to like tell us about or that sticks out for you or whatever? And he's like, I don't want to go there, Rory.
Yeah.
And so it's like,
and then we get a moment from a person who was a kid,
but he gets to not tell his story. He beats up children, but he's just a sheep he's just following orders from the crazy cult leader.
Yeah.
So this guy who maybe has made amends and has gone through his process, like whatever, right? Lots of nuance, lots of ambiguity. But the way that it gets ordered and structured in a kind of hierarchy allows this guy to be the receptacle for all of the weird shit that went down.
Yeah.
And the people who were executing a lot of that weird shit are never brought to any kind of real justice because we keep inflating and perpetuating the mythos of this singular character. Yes. And in so doing, like keep feeding into that God machine.
Yeah. Yeah.
Drives me.
I will say the benefit of this, at least in this documentary, we don't have like, that's what bothered me about the vow was you had lieutenants, one of whom was actively.
I think we are so much harder on Allison. What's her name? Who's the actress who also got
Allie. Yeah.
Allie.
I can't remember, but yeah.
I think we are so much harder on her than we are on this guy who's like, I don't want to talk about that. And they're like, okay.
Yeah.
And she, and she should go to jail for sex trafficking.
Right.
Whatever. Like that's not my job as like a scholar to adjudicate, right? Whatever. But like, if again, so taking, I guess what I'm trying to say is like taking nothing away from her complicity in sex trafficking.
Yeah.
I think that it's much easier to put women on the hook tied up with Keith Raniere.
Yes.
Than these,
because there's an unstated like gender betrayal.
Well, and it's an unstated gender betrayal, but I think it's also just a sexier story.
Yeah.
I think it's a sexier story about these women who are like hurting other women to please this guy's fetish than it is to talk about grown men beating up children, because that's also kind of just called Wednesday.
True.
And we don't let that become part of the story.
But the Vel also had a filmmaker who I think, and somebody please call me out.
Okay.
Who I think is a silent producer in the whole thing.
These are more of this is, if I'm doing speculative analysis, you're doing conspiracy theory analysis.
No, well, it's very clear that like they're working for the camera. It's very clear that they're both working for the camera. What's his name? The guy who's like, was like on the board.
Regardless.
No, my point is that he gets away. I think Ali is there. One of the other reasons is that Allison Mack. Yes. That Allison Mack is there as the foil against which the other two who quote unquote got out.
Yep.
And I also think are very involved in the storytelling
Mark
of
Sarah.
Mark and Sarah. And Mark's a filmmaker.
Sure.
And there's obvious scenes that were reshot for it.
Yes, 100%.
So that's another piece of it. But
yeah, it is. It doesn't.
There's no Rory, is my point. There's no Rory asking in that documentary. So, all right.
Anyway, that's one of my things is like this idea of like, I found it very powerful. One of the pieces that I found most powerful of the documentary was near the end when we kind of came full circle to some of the former addicts who were talking about how this group saved their lives.
Yeah.
And so in the first place, they were talking about how they got into it and kind of where their lives sort of went off the rails and then what this group offered. And then on the back end, they really grieve the loss of this group. Like the grief and the loss is real. They lost something really big. And the loss and the grief is real because the foundations were something that they still believe in. Like, so Synanon stopped one person put it like, sure, I guess I left Synanon, but I feel like Synanon left me.
Yeah.
Because the group just fundamentally changed what it was. So it was no longer this addiction recovery space. It was
so just. This gets to what I want to talk about a little bit. One of the things I want to talk about, like, so the rules, right? I thought that was, and maybe I'm making a bigger highlight of it than.
You're okay. I'm just shifting.
Then, got too many chords. Maybe I'm making a bigger kind of, highlight of it than they did in the documentary, but like there's something about I don't think it's just people who are dealing with addiction, but there are a lot of sorts of challenges people approach in their life with the strategy of like, all right, these are the rules I'm making for myself, right? In a variety of ways.
Right.
And I think what was interesting to me is the ways that those rules that were kind of Chuck's rules became the rules for the community. And in some ways, like that strategy was like, I think central to Chuck surviving and staying sober. They were central to all the people in Synanon and the success they had early on of actually dealing with addiction there. And so there's a kind of larger story here that I find really interesting as a kind of like, I don't know how to describe it, but about like what happens when you give up on those rules and how powerful they are.
Yeah.
That I found that really compelling. Like even like, yeah, it's all dressed up in cult documentary language, but at bottom it's like, I think there's in a way that's a little bit different from a lot of other cult docs, where you're either identifying as with the like if I watch Shiny Happy People, I'm like, yeah, that should happen to me. Great, you know, not great, but like I can. It's a very simple kind of one-to-one, or it's like the trip to the zoo to the animals. But this was an interesting thing where it's like, that theme I think resonates in a lot of ways with a lot of people, and I don't know, I just found that really interesting.
Yeah, and especially because I mean, and this is it's one of the reasons that I find frustrating the lack of time spent on bipolar disorder, because like in the same way that we did not have addiction recovery centers at the time, like what he was offering was something radically new for people, and just, I mean, you can imagine like if prison or like asylums are your options if you are an addict to something that isn't alcohol, right? Then like this is hope for so many people for the first time ever. And several of them said that like they would not be alive now if it hadn't come along, so they can't regret being part of it, whatever. But anyway, so we just did not have spaces for addiction recovery. We certainly at the time, arguably, you know, still in many ways, but like we did not in the 50s and 60s have language, much less help around so much to do with mental illness and psychosis. And so the structures that are vital to help people, and the kinds of rules, organization, behaviors, routine, accountability, like these things that are so important to so many people, not just in the like health and wellness world. I mean, you know, but certainly inside of that space, like we do not extend it to the story that we tell about Chuck Dederich. And I'm not saying that as a like he's actually a sympathetic character. I don't really find him as like it's not really it's not a narrative reading that way or a character reading that way for me, so much as it is a real like gap in the narrative itself.
Yeah, there's something about the whole thing that feels oddly ahead of its time.
Yeah.
In a way. I mean, even the schooling stuff, like for all of the negatives, like, you know, I mean, I know Montessori existed by this point, but it had not taken off in the way it has since, you know, the 90s in the United States. And so like, there's a way that a lot of that stuff there was something very experimental about the whole thing. They even talk about it as experiments. And on the one hand, when you have something that is experimental, it gives you, I mean, I do this a lot, like it gives you leeway for everything that goes wrong. It's like, oh, it was an experiment.
Sure.
Right?
Sure,
like, I don't know what's
sure,
happening.
Sure.
But it also means that you are kind of pushing the edges and the limits in a way that I think, whether it was the game as a kind of like ritual or the communal living or all of the things, you know, we didn't like people go away to rehab facilities now in a way that they didn't, you know, in that period. And this is kind of the first version of that.
Which is also I also saw this as a big time cautionary tale about the dangers of self-important, self-proclaimed allies.
Ooh, like who do you mean?
Man, the influx of wealthy lifestylers thinking that they could change the world, and they really wanted to like help these people and contribute to the cause. And it was a very, very, very quick trip from helping a cause to I want to move in myself. And this is actually about me. And this is really an important thing in my life. And that somehow their attempt at like funding a recovery center ends up pushing out the actual addicts in recovery.
Yeah. It's it's a massive warning against mission creep.
Everybody.
Yeah, it's a massive warning against mission creep, and
it's
but there's an alternative timeline where Chuck says no,
Mm-hmm.
And it would be, I think, but he couldn't. He didn't.
Well, no, I mean, but because they had money. And so, of course, he gets like attracted to the money.
Yeah.
And it just,
and I guess that's,
allies have to be like, what it means to be an ally is to be engaged in the structural, contextual work of making like fundamental reality better and easier for the community that you're invested in.
Yeah.
Like that's allyship. And that's a lot of times really like quotidian stuff. That's and so what they got wrapped up in though was kind of the virtue signally glittery appeal of this intentional living community. And then they've got all this money, and then he's interested in all the money, and they have all these parties. Like, anyway,
which I guess
one more example of allies.
Which I think is. I wish I do think one of the problems with is that Chuck is so flat as a character. Like he's the charismatic leader.
Yeah.
But like we don't get anything about his background, about where he comes from. It just opens with him. Like we vaguely know he did AA, was an alcoholic.
Right.
But like.
If you go down that rabbit hole, like I recommend.
Where did he get the game from?
Like, and it is, I mean, I don't know much about his life, but what like little digging that I did to prepare for this conversation, he comes by his stuff honestly, I mean, doesn't everybody?
Yeah.
It doesn't, what it means is that it perpetuates a cycle of abuse.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do think that we treat cult leaders, so-called, as phenomena that are sort of like born into some societal vacuum. And they are not born of a societal vacuum. They, in fact, like step into perhaps societal vacuums where people aren't being taken care of. But
I felt the same way about the Jonestown documentary we watched a while back. I don't remember what episode number. You can find it. But the where Jones and Chuck, they're all over the documentary. They're everywhere. They're constantly talking. They're constantly filming.
Sure.
But we don't get an explanation of them in a way.
Right.
And so
of what he came from.
Of like where they came from, where they, like all of that. And so I feel like the one that did do a good job with this, I think, is the Heaven's Gate one. Does a really good job of explaining like where Applewhite's coming from, of where
Bonnie
Nettles. And so so I think there's a thing, and that's also like really long, but like there's a thing that happens where I think there's something about the cult, the charismatic leader trope in the genre that allows that person to be both ever present but incredibly thin.
Yes, and also keeps them from again being a person who does not respond well to like the things that life throws at you. Like instead of being this like super treacherous, like evil monster lurking in some lair, like ready to snatch, misguided humans, it's a person who felt like an outsider because a bout with meningitis paralyzed part of his face. And so he was disfigured and he felt on the outskirts of society. His father was an alcoholic. And so he didn't have there are those kinds of things that they'll mention a little bit. Like but it's like this person is a human being just like the people that they end up abusing, and that doesn't make them a sympathetic character. But if we are to attend with any kind of seriousness to a cycle of abuse, well, then we have to place them in that cycle rather than acting like the cycle somehow is born in them. Because what that does is that it creates the fantasy that it can also somehow just die with them.
Right.
That it's that if we just eradicate this cult, this creepy cult, then everybody's okay. And it's like, no, everybody's not okay. I like that Jonestown episode because it was I think maybe the first time that I said, I'm here to tell you that things are never going to be okay or something. I remember saying something like that, and we had like a...
Yeah.
That one was a little bit...
And I think part of it, and both of those, this documentary and that one of the in common is, it's clear to me the directors want to sort of give the platform to the survivors or former members.
Yeah.
Right? And they don't want to make it about... It's almost like it's it's a Charles Manson overcorrection, right? Like we spend so much time worrying about like how Charles Manson became Charles Manson. So many documentaries are built around that, and like that. A lot of the newer ones, I think, are often like, no, we want to talk about the other people, but what that still leaves, that leaves the charisma. If you're going to still leave the charismatic figure there, it leaves them very thin. In a way,
I get what you're saying. I think that there is a way to, because ultimately I do think that it's the people who were part of these groups that should be telling their stories.
Yeah.
And I think there's a way to do that though, without stacking up. And I think it's always a choice that is never really being made by the people having these experiences. They're the ones who said he was just a guy.
Yeah.
He was just a guy.
Yeah.
It was the lifestylers who came in who started being like, he's a god because he's doing these amazing things. And like for the addicts who were in recovery, they were in recovery alongside him and they were just in this thing together.
Yes.
And so they don't make some kind of whatever deity out of him. In a similar sense, like I think that there is a way to hear their stories and still posit the person responsible for a lot of the abuse to be a cog in a bigger societal machine. Like, both things are true.
Oh, yeah.
That he is just a cog in a machine, and it's a really, really dangerous cog. Like, because the machine is busted.
Yeah.
Like the machine is, you know what I mean?
Right.
The machine is no good. And so he's a cog in this machine of like, whatever, untreated mental illness and perpetuating abuse cycles and right? He's a cog in a machine. And he did unbelievable amounts of harm.
Yeah.
Like both of those things are true.
Well, and they're deeply related because the machine was what
they
prompted
rely on.
Him to do any of this.
And this is what I guess frustrates me about, and what I think is important to talk about as, like, you know, social scientists. Like, I think that the reason that these stories are meaningful to discuss is that we want to think that the irreparable harm is, we want to make it make sense by having it belong to someone who is incomparably bad.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, but if you look at irreparable harm and trauma as something that exists inside of something that's real, real bad, but not incomparable. It's actually kind of the water that a lot of people swim in.
Yeah.
And so what makes sense of those phenomena?
Yeah.
What nuance can we bring to that conversation instead of like, this guy is weird, or bad, or whatever, or these people are weird or dumb, or, you know?
Yeah.
Because that was the whole thing about Synanon in the first place, that like these self-identified dope fiends were finally more than that. They could call themselves dope fiends because they finally were three-dimensional people alongside other people who were working to get better.
Because really, and I think this is what they're getting at with JD's last comments at the end, is like, really what it was about wasn't necessarily drug addiction. It was about loneliness. Like that was you know.
Yeah, well, and I mean,
and the lonely, you know,
and addiction. But yeah,
I think there's the connections between the two, right? Like the solution was community. Like that was what the game was about.
And if you live in a society, this is the busted machine, right? If you are an addict who lives in a society who sees your addiction and then makes you reducible to only that. This is all you are.
Yeah.
You're an addict, and so you belong on the outskirts of society. You don't get to count among us. If that's how you're treated, well, like that's the busted machine. You have to find community. You're forced to find community and do it. And so I just feel like playing into any of those moves that collapse people into one element of themselves is really part of the problem that I think you and I are trying to address.
Yeah. Do you have a cult favorite? We kind of did our takeaways just now, so I was going to say.
Yeah, those are our takeaways. That's true. I do my cult favorite is gonna be this weather that I know that sounds kind of like a cop out, but it's like, the summer has broken. I feel like we are. I know. But I saw a full week with no 90s in sight.
Yeah.
And while I do not love the cold, I needed a change of season. It was time. And so this fall could not come a moment too soon.
Yeah.
And on mornings like today, when you walk outside and it is crisp, the air is clean, there's something a little,
no,
I'll take it.
I have like 3 or 4 big old trees in my backyard.
Yeah.
And there's just a smell that happens when the temperature drops.
Sure.
Like the smell of
So it's almost roasting season. I'm very excited about that. I can finally turn on my oven again. Well, because I live in an old house, and so like the yours is better insulated than mine, I'm sure. No? I can't turn on my oven in the summer. My space is much smaller than yours. That's what's true.
I got the high ceiling. You got all this goose up there.
My space is much smaller. It's very old and it's much smaller. And so turning on the oven is just like is an absolute non-starter in the summer. So I'm like, root vegetables are going to become part of my life again.
Yeah.
Very excited. What's your cult favorite?
My cult favorite is we got a new dog.
You got a dog?
My family got a dog. Our second dog.
Animals are popping up all over the place over there.
His name Where was he when the snake was there? No. His name's Otis. He's about probably a year old, maybe a little younger. Was found out in the county. Okay. It was one of those things where living like Tuscaloosa has 100,000 people in it, but not really. Because like we told a couple friends, hey, we may want to get another dog.
Yeah.
And we're like, I want a small dog that doesn't shed like our current dog.
Yeah. Blah, blah, blah. All right.
Like, and then like they told, like satellite started linking up. They told people told people. And then it comes all the way around to like somebody told somebody we know. And that person told a coworker about it, who the coworker had a dog that they were fostering that someone they do pottery with had found in the county.
Yeah, because this is how community works, Michael.
And then it turns out the person who was fostering the dog is the parent of somebody that runs cross country with my kids who goes to school with them.
Yes.
And so we get a text randomly that's like, hey, I heard you were looking for a dog. We're like, how did you know?
Right.
And all that to say, they were like,
how could they not know?
And then they were like, that's true. And then they were like, hey, that's why it's so hard to find a therapist in this town because everybody knows everybody. But then and then randomly doing this dog, and then like, hey, we're going to be going out of town over the Labor Day weekend. You want to watch them while we're gone? And so you take a little test drive, and then the dog is still at my house. So so Otis is amazing.
Wonderful.
Yeah. People are going to like, I'll put a picture on the Instagram or something.
Do it.
You can find it.
Inquiring minds. Inquiring eyes want to see.
So he's enjoying the weather as well. Yeah, he's great. He looks really cute in photographs. He's kind of ugly in person.
Oh, okay. He's just photogenic.
He's very photogenic.
Okay.
But he's a big dope. He's a big.
Well, great. Well, congratulations, Altman family.
Thank you. Yes.
For your new edition.
Yeah. And thanks for listening. Congratulations to everyone who finished this episode.
What? What? It's just because I have a soapbox or two about privileging individualism.
No, I'm just glad if everyone knew how hard it was to get this.
We went through some things to get here.
Oh,
but they don't know that.
It was like getting this thing over the finish line.
Never let the seams show, Mike. This is Julia Child's advice about, like, if you make a cake and it falls, you don't say this is my fallen cake. You say this is my souffle, or this is my trifle, or this is my.
See, right? I was practicing like strategic vulnerability with our audience to build
Absolutely
community.
not. No, I'm saving them from unneeded stress.
Okay.
They don't have to worry about any of that because it's a delicious trifle.
It is a delicious trifle.
Yeah.
There you go. Thanks for listening to Cult Favorite. Please subscribe to the podcast. Spotify, Apple, and YouTube. Leave us a rating and review. Follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Cult Favorite. Special thanks to the Department of Religious Studies at the University of Alabama for production assistance. May none of your cakes fall.
They're about to do great because the weather's going to cooperate.
And may none of you have 90 degrees in your weather wherever you are. And
without
we will
the
see
jacket.
you in 2 weeks. And we're going to talk about
the Wolf of God.
Martial. I'm going to get the name mixed up.
Martial.
Yeah. Martial. Like a
Yeah.
one vowel difference. Okay.
Consonant.
The
I
Wolf
think.
of God.
But yes. Okay. We'll talk about it.
Yep. See you in 2 weeks.